Hello, and my name is Olga McCarville, and I'm the Arkansas State President for Phi Beta Lambda. Thank you for joining the 2014 Resume Tips Workshop as part of the 2014 State Fall Leadership Virtual Conference. We will now begin. This is the Resume Workshop for the 2014 Arkansas State Fall Leadership Virtual Conference. The recent economic downturn means one thing to us, the graduating students. More people are seeking fewer available jobs. Now, the laws of supply and demand means that we must have something better than the other person in order to get noticed. That something is your resume. It's vital that your resume presents the best reflection of you, your talents and abilities, in order to get noticed by an employer. The resume that gets noticed is the one that gets called in for an interview. It's often the first impression a prospective employer has of you. The resume is selling you to the employer. Many programs like Microsoft Word have resume templates, but be cautious using them. Fancy sprinkles may look cute to you, but they are often thought of as junk or clutter to an employer. Keep the resume clean and focused. Think from the employer's point of view. They might get a few hundred resumes to look through, and they usually have little time to go through them. The ones that tell them what they need to know as quickly as possible may well make the difference in getting the interview call. So first things first, who are you? Make sure you spell your name correctly. This seems funny enough, but you'd be surprised. Using your middle initial or not, it's optional, but be consistent. And I say that because you're also going to be writing a cover letter. Whatever you put on the resume, make sure it reflects the same way on the cover letter. Printed resume should have your address. If you're posting your resume online or are blanketing the country, so to speak, be cautious, including your complete physical address. Phone number. Consider getting a Google Voice or a similar phone number, one that you can do blocking with. Whatever number you choose, make sure it's a working number. If you have a voicemail set up, make sure it's a professional message on the voicemail. No songs or fancy themes. Just make sure you check it regularly. For an email address, be professional. And I lost my place. And the email address, be professional. Sexy football fan at whatever, or give me a job at such and such may not give the right impression. Consider using your school email while you're in school, but remember to update it once you no longer use it. And that goes with make sure it's a valid email address, the same tip as before. And also, make sure you check it regularly. If an employer puts out the word that they want to talk to you and you don't answer, it may make it seem to them that you're no longer interested. Remember, make it as easy as possible for an employer to contact you. So in summary, on your resume, make sure you spell check. Make sure everything is valid, correct, make sure it's accurate information, and make sure you check it and check the things often that you use. What comes next on the resume depends on your greatest relevant strength, your strong suit. By that I mean, what do you have that the employer needs the most? And where do you find out what the employer wants? Well, their job listing. Look at the ad or the posting. Generally, employers will list the duties or needs in order of importance to them. Some employers will rank what they need by the percentage of time you'll spend performing the tasks. Match your strengths to their needs. This means that your experience may not come first. Remember that the resume is your sales pitch to the employer. While you're starting out, your degree or education might be the most relevant information to the employer. Don't forget that your experience with Phi Beta Lambda or other community service activities may be your best-selling tool. This is something to keep in mind. But let's look at this a little more closely. Start with the present and work backwards. And if you're like me, stay within the last 10 or so years of experience. Now, you don't necessarily want to put down that you mowed yards when you were 12, but you might include it if you started a mowing service that grew to a 5-person team, or that it continues to have success today as a successful business. Remember, this is your chance to sell to the employer. Emphasize the duties and accomplishment that relate to the job. And don't leave unexplained gaps. Employers will look at the gaps. Be prepared to speak and answer the questions about them. And what if you don't have a work history? This is where your time in Phi Beta Lambda can shine. What projects did you lead? What offices did you hold? Include the duties and accomplishments. By duties and accomplishments, say, for example, my background is in retail sales and rental. How could somebody working in that environment that's working on marketing, client service, or public speaking events use their experience in retail? The key is to think about what you do currently that can or will apply to the field you want to work in. Remember to use professional speak, but don't overdo it. Which sounds better? I swept, I mopped, or I maintain the cleanliness standards in the dining and kitchen area. While we're on the subject, if there are duties that you could be doing now for your current employer to better prepare you for your coming career, talk to your employer about getting put in charge of them, or at least getting trained on or being allowed to shadow the duties. Remember, this is your chance to improve yourself now for the job tomorrow. Don't minimize or overlook your opportunities that you have in your current job. They might surprise you. On your education, start with your highest degree and work backwards. If you're working on your bachelor's now, that's what you put first. If you have your associates, list that next. Remember to work with your highest and work backwards. If the city is in the name, you don't need to duplicate it. For example, I attend University of Arkansas at Little Rock. I wouldn't have to say Little Rock, Arkansas afterwards. But if it's not clear, go ahead and include it. Include an anticipated date of completion. They may not be recruiting today. They may be looking for the next season or when you graduate. So what about high school? Do you list it? Well, that all depends. If your school is prominent, consider including it. I mean, some schools have a strong alumni association and they show a preference for it. Or if your high school gears you towards a certain area, it could be something. Remember, this is your sales pitch. Speaking of, your GPA can help you shine. Now you want to include it if you have a 3.0 or above. Now, the question is if the GPA is in your field of study or your overall school GPA. This is something you might think about. That depends on the field and the employer and you. If you had the trouble the freshman year but have been acting strong and acing in your field, consider using your field GPA. Also include special awards and honors. Were you on the dean's list? Were you on the president's list? Remember, special is the key. If everybody has it, it's not really all that special. References. Are they still required? That kind of depends. If your resume is already full with your education and your experience, you may consider leaving it off. But if you're going to have it on there, you generally want 3 of them. But have at least 3 to 5 ready. This can allow you to rotate them out and use whichever reference that best apply to the position. Now make sure your references are professional contacts. Don't use your buddies or your relatives. Think faculty, think your PBL advisor, your employer, your work colleagues. And make sure you let your references know before you send your resume out. Let them know the job you're applying for. And make sure you have the correct and the current information for them. Your advisor has a copy of a sample resume in the Chapter Management Handbook. Pay close attention to the structure of your resume. Utilize the margins and use action words. We'll talk about that in a moment. Use a conservative, easy-to-read font, such as Times New Roman or Calibri. the one that Microsoft Word uses most often currently. Use consistent punctuation. Generally, your resume is just going to be short, few word bits, the highlights. But if you do use them, be consistent throughout your resume. And another thing, there is no I in resume. By that, don't say, I started a lawn mowing service. Just list lawn mowing service. Because, the resume is about you. That's understood. And finally, spend a little extra when you print your resume. Use heavy quality paper. A lot of copy services have what they call resume paper. It's just a heavy, thicker bond. This is not the time to use the cheap stuff. Tell the copier to use the good stuff. Remember, most companies take online submissions nowadays. But if you email the resume, make sure you send it as a PDF file, so if the version you send is also the version that they get. When you have the resume printed, take a few copies with you, along with you to the interview. Because when they print it out, they may not quite come out the way you intended. Now, I mentioned action words. Words like accomplished, achieved, completed, monitored, resolved, served. These are good action words. And there's a list of more. Your PBL advisor probably help you out with that. I mentioned earlier to match your resume to your cover letter. Make sure they have the same theme, the same font, and the same structure. Make sure they kind of mirror each other so it doesn't look like it's two different people writing it. And that's why I mentioned the caution about using the preloaded themes from Microsoft Words or programs like that. Cover letter generally has 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph, tell them why you're writing them. I found your listing in an ad. I found it on this website. Include information so they know what position you're looking for and who to thank for getting you to them. Include the job sought and other identifying information if available, such as the job number, the listing number. Make it easy for them. Just think, if you're applying to a position in a hospital, just think how many openings they have at any given time. You want to make it easy for them to get you to the right slot. The second paragraph, what do you have to offer? How do your skills fit their needs? You may do it as bullet points. You may, use a variety of themes. Check the ad. Make sure that what you have matches. Put your strengths first. The third paragraph is the wrap-up, tied up with a nice little bow. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to an interview at your earliest convenience. In other words, this is where you close the sale. Remember to tailor the cover letter most specifically to the job. Do your homework. Study the ad or listing to make sure what you have is what they want. And personalize it. Try to find the person you're sending it to in the address field. That looks much better than Dear Sir or Madam or Yo HR person. It could go a long way. Remember, you want to stand out, and you want to stand out in a good way. And unfortunately, we do live in the digital era, and a lot of scams may come your way. They come in different forms, via text, email, or from a phone call. Scammers claim to have access to your resume from a reputable job bank, such as Monster. The scammers will then attempt to gain your personal information, such as your name, which should be a really good alert that it's a scam. Or they'll want your social security number so that they can gain access to your bank accounts. Scam ads are often poorly written with numerous typographical errors. And you'll get the emails or the contact during non-standard business hours. Remember, most HR people are 9-to-5ers. Be careful of no experience needed at listings. Granted, you're starting out, on the entry level end. But if it sounds too good to be true, be it the ad or the salary, It may be. Be careful if they need to wire money or transfer funds, especially if they're saying we need to transfer funds to your bank so that you can buy certain equipment. In or out, be cautious. If they offer the job on the spot, just from your resume, be careful of emails from non-business email addresses. Something like an odd name at AOL or Hotmail. Most larger companies will have thatcompany.com. Be careful if they want to do an instant message interview. Yes, like our virtual conference. Digital technology is becoming more prevalent. Don't confuse it with a Skype interview if you're in Arkansas and they're in New York. Be cautious with the digital era. If you have questions or concerns, talk to the Department of Workforce Services in your state. Talk to your advisor. Talk to one of your teachers. Speak with someone. Don't just go into it blind. And there we have it. I thank you very much for taking part of the resume workshop. Have a good evening.